2024 hopeful Vivek Ramaswamy actually sparred over the indictments of former President Donald Trump on an episode of his show. Let's watch.
I need you to find me 11,780 more votes. Now, that alone, if I just had that, wouldn't that be a case? I need you to find me, he's saying to the...
And they didn't do it, right?
But that, I tried to rob a bank the other day and I didn't get the money.
What law, I mean, here's where I'm at. Not every bad judgment or every bad act is a crime.
Oh my God.
What law did that violate?
He's the president.
What law did that violate?
Probably the oath of office that he took when he would defend the United States.
That's not something we put... I mean, George Bush violated the oath of office.
What is more...
When he sent troops to Iraq. This is why we vote people out. That's how elections work.
I know, but...
So I think that's the fundamental difference in how we do things in the United States, where you're taking deeply held judgments that you disagree with. Great, go to the ballot box and vote. That's how we do things in the United States of America.
Which is exactly what he's on trial for.
So there are a number of laws at issue, and anyone who reads the Georgia indictment can discover what those are, including prohibitions against solicitations to commit election fraud and the like. Moreover, I think that Bill Maher did a disservice to the argument because, in fact, there is a lot more than what was on the Bill Raffensperger call. There is evidence of a conspiracy headed by Donald Trump to have various election officials in 7 states across the United States of America knowingly put together false states of electors that did not reflect the democratic will of the people in those states, that said, despite there being no evidence of fraud or that Trump had duly won the election, that he had won the election. The John Eastman memo, John Eastman, who put together this plan, said that he knew those false slates of electors would be, quote, dead on arrival. He did not believe that they were actually accurate, true, or would hold up in the court of law. However, the plan was not just to have the slate of electors carry the day. The plan was that the confusion, the ambiguity on the day that this slate of electors would be submitted would be sufficient to justify Mike Pence sending those slates of electors to sending the vote to the legislatures as the Constitution permits when there is genuine ambiguity, so that the legislators can decide the outcome of the election, knowing that the legislator count meant that Donald Trump would still win.
What Vivek got right in that exchange is that violating the oath of office is, in fact, not a crime. If that's all it was, it would be, a reason for impeachment, which is what they actually did. The call itself, obviously we have to wait to see what kind of defense Trump mounts. If he mounts it, that wasn't a request to find votes I didn't believe existed, but votes that I had been told had not been counted. Of course, as you point out, there's a lot more to the Georgia indictment in terms of forgery of documents, in terms of trying to acquire information from Dominion.
The poll worker intimidation.
That the associates are going to, the reason this is going to be a very difficult case for Trump is because there's so many other people charged with more obvious criminal components that they're involved in, and they're going to flip and they're going to say Trump knew about it, and it's going to be a tough situation for him. We're talking about Vivek Ramaswamy a lot today because he had a big moment in the debate last night. I know there was more that you wanted to bring up with him.
Yeah, so principally there's this question of Vivek Ramaswamy distinguished himself in many ways by being the Trump on the stage, by not backing down from questions about whether or not he would support Donald Trump if he were to be elected president of the United States, if he were to win the nomination, saying that Donald Trump was the best president of the 21st century, maybe of the 20th century. And so
21st century. I think he left the 20th century open. I think he said 21st century.
Well, then that's a small pool to be pulling.
Well, right.
But okay, fine, fair enough. But the question is, if Donald Trump is still such a great president, it can be forgotten watching the debate last night since Donald Trump wasn't there. But since Donald Trump is in fact in the race and is leading by like 40 points, why are you running Vivek Ramaswamy?
Well, he's got to win so he can pardon Trump.
Well, he's not going to win. That's the whole point. Like, why are you running when Donald Trump is clearly the front runner and is doing very well and is basically the same version of you, but with a much broader base of national support? And so what became really interesting during the debate is the same kind of ire that you saw from Bill Maher there was expressed by several folks on the debate stage in a way that I think went beyond the Ron DeSantis memo that told him, the super PAC memo that told him to go after Vivek Ramaswamy. It seemed to be a kind of organic frustration that came out of the statements that Vivek was making on the stage, not just related to his defense of Trump, but generally speaking, a kind of a mood and attitudinal choice that he was making, and also some statements that he made that were patently and provably contradictory to things that he had made in the past. And it did seem like people were bristling at the idea that he plays potentially fast and loose with the facts. And I want to go through a couple of these. One of the most notable moments, a ding by Chris Christie, which had Vivek Ramaswamy quiet for the next 20 or 30 minutes of the debate in a notable void, was that he accused him of stealing Barack Obama's line from 2008 about how he was a skinny guy with a weird name on the stage. Can we play that clip?
Mill worker's son who dares to defy the odds. The hope of a skinny kid with a funny name who believes that America has a place for him too.
So Vivek Ramaswamy really did say, like, almost verbatim what Barack Obama said there.
Is that a crime, though? Who cares?
Wait a minute. What's his name? Chris Christie calls him out on this. He says, you know, you're telling everybody else here that we have canned lines and that we're giving old Republican Party lines that nobody cares about, which I think is a legitimate criticism of Vivek Ramaswamy. They were doing stale, rehashed lines. But can you really accuse somebody of doing exactly that when you have not only taken somebody else's line from over a decade ago, who is not even your ideological parallel, who is not even someone that you agree with, someone who you want to ding Chris Christie for hugging Barack Obama, but you're going to literally take his line in the debate? I mean, I think a lot of people didn't really recognize that how closely Ramaswamy's was aped what Barack Obama had said, and Chris Christie's line didn't land especially well, I think, with at least half of the audience. But what do you make of someone who would, at the same time they accuse some of somebody else of doing exactly what he was doing that very moment? In fact, Chris Christie started mouthing one of Vivek Ramaswamy's lines along with him as he said it because it was so predictable what Vivek Ramaswamy was going to say because it was so canned.
Look, there's no debate. We just played the clip that it is exactly what Obama said. I don't know if people are going to care about it. I don't care. We'll see. The viewers are going to have to let us know in the comments if they were motivated by Christie's dig at him there, that he was, and you're right that he came after Christie for being too close to Obama. I don't know. I don't know that it really matters. You know, Obama was also a very charismatic and successful political performer, regardless of what you think of his policies. So, you know, modeling himself in that way is not necessarily from a tactical standpoint, is not a crazy thing to do.
It's not a crazy thing to do, but it's a really odd thing to do when you're talking about running as a very different kind of candidate than Barack Obama. It also reads to me as really inauthentic. You don't have your own personal story? You're just going to ape somebody else's? Here's another example of that. He said that his parents came here 40 years ago with no money and used this to say something about the American dream and how, I guess, America is a great country at the same time, of course, that he is advocating for, from a policy perspective, cutting a lot of the social benefits that make people want to come to America and thrive in America in the first instance. Specifically, he wants to end the LBJ, Great Society programs, including Medicare for all and Medicaid. But what
people
is
come
interesting
to America
to me,
to take advantage of our great social safety net programs? I mean, that's not...
They do, but that's not my point. The point that I'd like to make is that he was lying about his parents and how much money they had when they came to the United States. So he described his parents as coming here 40 years ago with nothing. It's a quick hop, skip, and jump to his Wikipedia to find out that his father was a graduate of both of his parents, of prestigious universities in India, worked as an engineer and patent attorney for General Electric, while his mother was a graduate of a Mysore Medical College and Research Institute and worked as a geriatric psychiatrist. So he had two professional, well-to-do parents in India. He comes from a Brahmin caste, the highest caste in India. There's no indication that they were anything less than upper class, middle class, maybe potentially upper middle class or affluent in India.
I mean, we don't know. Well, in India, sure, but when they come here.
So the question is, why represent yourself as a poor immigrant family that came here with no money in their pocket? With no money, he says. I came to this country with no money 40 years ago, when obviously they came to this country with enormous advantages over millions of Americans who are struggling today with high inflation, terrible
we don't know
cost
exactly
of living.
what situation they were in when they came here. Immigrating is an expensive and difficult and lengthy process.
Which is why most immigrants to the United States, legal immigrants, are very affluent, are on average much more affluent than the average American.
Right. I think we would need more information to say.
I don't think we need more information at all.
It is a lie.
I think that it's pretty clear that his parents did not come here with no money. So the question is, again, why is he trying to appropriate other people's life experiences? His story is perfectly legitimate. Can he just run as a successful guy who made a lot of money in business, who's a good business guy and has great ideas for the country? Why do you need to do this cosplay where you're pretending to be Barack Obama, or alternatively, pretending to be somebody else's working class migrant family when that wasn't your own story? And then the last point, the last pretty obviously easy to fact check inconsistency that came up was the moment about the climate hoax. So this was widely covered. We talked about it in another segment. We played that clip in another segment. But he says that he said that the climate change was a hoax. There have been, in the last few months, recordings of him saying the opposite, that he does believe that climate change is real. And I think that we have the clip of him previously sounding very different than he did at the debate now.
Climate change agenda is a hoax. Climate change is also real. Mm-hmm. I'm not denying the underlying reality that global surface temperatures are going up, and in part due to human activity. Climate change agenda is a hoax.
Well, I think what he said in the debate is that he thinks some of the policy responses to climate change are more destructive than climate change itself.
He did say that, which is also deeply untrue. Estimates are about 2 million people have died from climate change globally in the last, I think, 10 years or so.
Right, but we're all lifted up by the energy production and fewer people die from.
But Robby, that's not
climate.
The question. The question is, did more people? Who are the 2 million people who died from climate change policies, whatever those are, as compared to the 2 million people who have died?
It's all the people who don't
change.
Die because we live in a more affluent, more technological society because of the. Well, that
but that's
exactly
not what he said.
Talking about.
He said more people die from climate change policies than from climate change.
People die of poverty when they don't have access to.
Right. Well, he can make that argument, but that's not the argument that he made on the debate stage.
He's making, but we'll leave
that is not. But wait, we can't leave it at that because I have one more point that I'd like to make.
No, we got to leave it at that.
The point that I would like to make is that specifically the question I think that Americans have to deal with is if he is someone who is fairly new to the debate stage, new to the political scene, who is quite obviously saying things within a couple of months that are very different from one thing or another. And in the face of a question, the specific question that they got about climate change is, do you believe it's man-made? And there was supposed to be a hand-raising question about it.
The hand-raising questions they're BS. They're transparently BS. Ron DeSantis was right to call them because these things are more complicated than a yes or no answer, and it's ridiculous to force the candidates into doing those things.
We could get to this more quickly if you would just.
If I would just let you. Okay, I will sit here silently while you list off your problems with Vivek Ramaswamy.
Silently. I know that you have to wrap. I know that you have something to get to. There were a couple of points, a bunch of important things that didn't come up in other segments that I think are important to talk about.
Go ahead.
The direct question was, do you believe that climate change is real? And there was a pivot. You're right. He did caveat his answer to say something about, I think that climate policy is a hoax, something like that verbiage. But that, again, is an example of him evading a core truth. Do you think, the core of the question, do you actually think that climate change science is real? At another point, as we just watched, he said clearly the answer is yes. He believes that climate change is real and it's caused by human beings. Why is it that he can't give those kind of straight answers at the debate? And my only point is that I think that the frustrations that came out across the stage among the other people were not just that he's ahead and he's winning and that he's getting applause lines. That's legitimate to be upset about, but he did a good job in those things. But the fact that he's seeming to get away with what are lies, or at least dramatic inconsistencies with what he said before. And how long is that going to last before that bubble pops?
Well, I don't know, and I'm genuinely curious to see what our viewers in particular think about Vivek Ramaswamy's performance and his views and his policies. So do let us know in the comments how much you like the guy, what your thoughts were, and we'll have more Rising right after this.